Mm, all right.
Okay, I believe this is working. Hello there, everyone. Happy Saturday. Happy Batman Day, apparently. We didn't know that was a thing, but Aaron and I are both celebrating today. So there we go. We didn't even plan this. It's just apparently that's what the internet is saying. It's Batman Day. So I'll take it.
Yeah.
If you didn't already know, it's Sam here with another video for you. I'm here with author J. Aaron Gruben to talk about reading, writing, publishing, and more. Hey, Aaron.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me over here, Sam.
I'm glad to do it. Yeah, thanks for coming on. Aaron, I've been trying to put you in a genre, and that's been it's been a little tricky. Because
Yeah,
I mean, it sounded like sci-fi, which there is some of that.
sure.
But you also like a historical element because you have a time travel story.
Yeah.
So we've been saying like a sci-fi historical author or something like that. We'll talk about more about that and what categories, if any, you fit into in a little bit, I'm sure. But I know you're in a time travel series called Tangled Eons,
Mm-hmm.
and some other books too. So I'll let him tell you more about those in just a minute. So as always, I'm grateful that Aaron has come on with us today to answer some of our questions. And as always, I have some questions prepared for him, but I also want to make it an interactive discussion. So any of you, if you're watching on Facebook, in the chat, whatever, just if you're a reader, writer, fan, aspiring author, a time travel, sci-fi, Batman fan, any of the or all the above, post your questions in the chat about reading, writing, publishing, sci-fi fandom, or any of those topics, since we want to hear from you too, and we'll have a good time with this discussion. Okay, so Aaron, as we jump into it, just for anyone who's not familiar, can you give us an overview of your writing works? I know you have that one series and maybe other major books you published.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, it's hard for me to figure out what genre I have too. The one you're talking about, I have them all here too. Is this series here? So I have three in that one, and it's a time travel series, Tangled Eons. So we've got the Crescent Tides. I'm just publishing a new cover, so it's got a proof copy here, and then Fatal Fogs and the Stalwart Supinator, a superhero story that fits into the same world.
I knew one of them was a superhero story, and I saw that, and that's my thing, obviously. So made me excited.
Yeah, so these have been fantastic fun to write. They're really unique. The main character is a veterinarian, so that's what I really do for a living to feed my family. I'm a veterinarian, and I write for fun.
Cool.
So these are time travel like adventure stories, especially like focusing on the aspects of history, and do a lot of detailed historical research, and then start thinking about what might happen if somebody changed something in history through time travel. So they have a lot of fun thinking about like alternate history ideas, and then world building in kind of a loose world. Some of my favorite authors have a big world, and you don't have to read the books all in order necessarily, and they all kind of fit together. So that's kind of how I've done these first three anyway. Is their characters crisscross and connect a lot.
Connected but not, or connected by individual.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then so yeah, those are my probably my bigger fiction books I have. I've written a lot of nonfiction too. One other fiction set I've been doing are these ones. These are a fantasy series I wrote that are kind of silly. We've got Juvament and the Mubble Fubbles. Those are real medieval words. This is like an
really
explanation. Yeah.
I make some comment, but I didn't realize it was a real word.
If you're ever sad and depressed and have the blues, you have the Mubble Fubbles. That's what they used to say back in the day. There you go. So
I didn't know that. Yeah, I like medieval stuff, but I haven't researched it extensively. So
yeah. So these are kind of they're real humorous fantasy books about all kinds of different things, like a romp through medieval Jerusalem in the 1200s, and some unique parts of the stories, and they're real silly and will make you laugh a lot.
Okay, if you have the Mubble Bubbles, then
yeah, exactly, it's perfect.
Okay,
yeah. And then I have nonfiction books I've written too. I did a study on the codes of chivalry for kids. So there's one for kiddos, and then there's one for like adults and high schoolers. The 10 Commandments of Chivalry are something that's influenced my life a lot. Chivalry is a concept we talk about a lot still today, but it meant so much more centuries ago, when it was first invented in the Middle Ages. So this is a code of chivalry from the 11th century in France, and that I took and wrote some studies on. So I have some history studies about those. Have a book I just finished. This is Ile of Saint-Gilles. It's an old chanson de geste. So this is an old French medieval epic poem that I kind of rewrote in a silly way for kids, basically.
Okay.
I used to sing it in castles, so I had to write some songs too. So there's 6 songs in the back. You can
do music.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep, play some music and write some music here and there too, just when I have a chance. I have some. Everybody's always asking me to write vet books. So whenever these are kind of like my Sherlock Holmes. Conan Doyle, his least favorite character was Sherlock Holmes, but everybody wanted him to write more Sherlock Holmes. So I've had fun. I've had way more fun than I thought I would writing some vet books. These ones are interactive case study books. So you get to do like you get to do some blood work and x-rays, and then there's a mystery you solve in there. And the fun thing is I've had characters from my world of Tangled Eons that I kind of intersperse in these books too.
Interesting.
So they're kind of a cross between fiction and nonfiction. You get to learn what it's like to be a veterinarian and find a mystery story at the same time. So
it's all connected somewhere somehow.
Yeah, they're all kind of sneakily connected. If you read all my books, you'll find a lot of connections you didn't expect.
I like that. I like that. Cool.
That's most of it. I have a Bible study I wrote with my wife about kingship. And then we wrote this little fantasy book for kids. I always forget about this one. It's a little hobgoblin picture story. I had fun drawing. I'm a terrible artist, but I drew some kid pictures, and then I wrote
it. Right?
Wait, was that?
They don't know us, right? No.
And then the fun part of this one is it's written in a Beowulf Old English meter, so it's like it has the ring of Old English meter. So
my little guy might like that one in a few years. He's so we're just now getting him to appreciate some of the good kids books. But yeah,
excellent. Yeah.
It sounds like you got quite a few diversified interests, which is cool. You're a regular Renaissance man, maybe.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's sci-fi and fantasy, which I know are sometimes lumped together, but I mean they are different. You got both of those. You've got nonfiction science and doctor stuff too. That's really cool. Something for everyone, it sounds like.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about being a writer is I can write about whatever interests me at the time. So right now I'm writing about World War II also. We'll talk about that some more. Okay. So it's just totally different every time. So
we can talk about any of the I think on this I want to primarily focus on the fiction, because that's what I talk about mostly on here.
Sure.
But even among that, there's a few options you just gave us, but I know Tangled Eons was the one we were kind of highlighting. So how did you get interested in writing in this genre? And I guess, again, this genre is like sci-fi, but also historical time travel stuff. Any favorite stories that inspired you, books, movies, anything, or just you always were fascinated by it?
Yeah, that's a good question. A little of both of those things. So I've always loved science fiction in books and in like movies and comics and things that I read. Time travel stories especially have always fascinated me. It was like like Back to the Future and some of those campy Star Trek episodes with back to gangster times and things like that. Those have always been my favorite. It's partly because I've always loved studying history too. So it's fun to have a place where history and technology and science fiction meet, and you can have a lot of fun telling stories that way too. So those have always been some of my favorite stories. What started me writing was an article by a guy named Thomas Madden about the Crusades. So it was a history article just about all the different misconceptions that we have about the Crusades, and some of the research that people were doing at the time back in high school. And I thought that's really, really interesting. And I started reading about it more and more. And then I wrote a book about it. So that was the first thing I ever wrote. And then
Was that the first Tangled Eons, or was it a different one?
So that's a different one that someday I will publish. I'm going to rewrite. It turned out to be like a 6-year project of 900 pages. It's a big thing. So it's like a historical fiction book about the First Crusade. So that was a fun book to write, and that was really what got me interested in writing to start with.
Okay.
And then when I started Tangled Eons, it was sort of a spin-off of that same interest. So I was really interested in the Crusades, and I started thinking, what would it would be a fun way to sort of investigate the history I was reading in a personal way that people could relate if I sent somebody from the future back into the Middle Ages. So I picked the very end of the Crusade period, 1571, in the Battle of Lepanto, which was a big oar galley battle on the Mediterranean, to be kind of the nexus point of the first book in Tangled Eons, and then wrote that. And that was one of the earliest books I wrote after that Crusade book, and it was a lot of fun to write. So I've kept poking at that series over the years. It's become more and more fun. So
it sounds like you were kind of interested in the historical first, and then you're using the sci-fi as a vehicle to get to that. Is that a fair assessment?
That is a fair assessment. Yeah. And then as I started writing about time travel, I wanted to be a little more accurate, so I started reading some of the more technical things too. I read a book by Brian Clegg about how to build a time machine, and it's like the physics of time travel and what it might look like, and some people that have really been researching time travel for years and things.
Yeah, for a sci-fi guy, I know very little about the real science of it, but
me too. But that was fun to try to incorporate in the book. It was above my head most of the time. It was trying to build a machine in my story. So
it sounds like you're doing your research. I mean, I'm sure you've done your historical research too. You're already speaking as someone who's knowledgeable of the time period you're writing in, and now you're doing your sci-fi research too. So yeah, it sounds like I think someone like Mark Twain would approve. Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite stories. It's pretty fun.
Let me think of that, but I can't say for sure, but I'm guessing Mark Twain didn't do much actual research into time travel.
Yeah, so, probably not. I love his time travel use is completely a vehicle for the story. There's no explanation at all. The guy just gets knocked on the head and wakes up somewhere else.
What just happened? And
yeah, but it makes a good story, and that's what I love about time travel stories is you can use the time travel to make the story fascinating. So one thing I've had fun in Tangled Eons is using that to tell action stories. So some of the action scenes are really fun. So I have some scenes in Crescent Tides, the first book, where they can communicate in real time with like the future and the past. So they can have action scenes where they're like manipulating different sets of people at the same time. So it makes for very interesting scenes to write in books about war. So.
I love all that. I mean, I enjoy thinking through it. I haven't, none of my big works have been about time travel yet. I have a story in my mind in the back burner that I've started as a kid and stuff, but maybe one day I'll get into that.
You should.
Of course, I mean, as a superhero guy, the newest one, the Supinator. I mean, it's superheroes are always connected to time travel, and I mean, there's not a point in real history with superheroes. Well, maybe the future, we don't know yet, but no. So it's like, but that's connected to the time travel one too. Like, how does that fit in?
Yeah, good question. So the Supinator is he is loosely connected to my time travel. So I try not to give away too much story for those of you guys who want to read it.
As much as you can divulge.
The end of the time travel books that I have, basically there's like this secret government group that's going almost Stargate-ish style into the past and researching history. And so they're intersecting with this homespun superhero who's a washed out veterinarian, because that's what I relate to. he ends up building himself into a superhero, almost like a thrift store superhero, MacGyver style. He's just a smart guy that can MacGyver lots of things together, but doesn't have any real superpowers. And he's intersects with some of the things that my time travel group is doing as he tries to fight villains in Washington, D.C. So it turned out to be a real fun, just a superhero story on its own.
Set in modern times, the present and stuff.
Yeah, so I said it in just, I don't have a specific year, but like 10 years from now. So
Okay.
just kind of, so technology's advanced just a little bit,
Sure.
but it feels like today. And my brother-in-law, part of the fun for Supinator, this was a fun project for me because my brother-in-law did all the illustrations. I wanted some comics, so
Hey.
he drew comics for me. So every few chapters got a comic page. So he's a much better artist than I am. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
That sounds like it's right up my alley. I mean,
you got to get a copy of it. It was fun. Yeah, I really liked writing Supinator.
and you can read it independently, even if you haven't read the other ones.
That's correct. Yeah, so you can read this one probably more than the other two. Even it's kind of an independent story that some of the other characters intersect in, and so kind of revealing the future here. I've got 3 more that I'm working on,
Nice.
and he's gonna become more involved in time travel as those go along.
Nice.
So you just barely start to see some time travel effects in this first Supinator book, and in the next one,
Cool.
there's going to be pretty heavy duty changes in.
It sounds like it sounds like you've got big plans, and you're not stopping anytime soon. So that's cool.
That's right.
Okay, great.
It hurts after a while. I got like plans in my head that I can't get out fast enough. So. Yeah.
We had a question in the comments. My friend Tess asked. Well, actually, she said we started answering her question as she was typing it. So I'm glad we're on the ball today, I guess.
Yeah.
But she wanted to ask about the research you do, because you're dealing with 2 research-heavy genres, both sci-fi and I mean, both the tech world and theoretical time travel, as well as historical fiction. So
sure.
If you tell us any more about your research process and just what that looks like for you, how you delve into that.
Yeah,
we'd love to hear it.
It's a great question, Tess. Yeah. Trying to think of the best way to start talking about research. I mean, I pretty much it's driven by the story a little bit. So if I run into something I need to know, I just start digging, and I tend to fall into rabbit holes really fast. So I'll start researching and spend hours looking at one thing and the other thing, and until I understand what I need to know about. Usually I'll start reading, pick several different books on the subject when I know, like with the era I'm writing about in history, or some of the big tech concepts that I'm going to need to know. I'll start reading books about it a few months ahead of time, and usually go through 4 or 5 books as I start the book and do a first draft. And then there's about 6,000 little things that come up. That's one of the things that I find challenging writing fiction as opposed to nonfiction. The research for nonfiction is way more straightforward. I know exactly what I need to find out and do it. But when you imagine somebody, like living in the 1500s, you have to find little details that you never thought about. So I'll start writing the story and think, oh, wait a minute, would he use that kind of money? And then I have to go and look up a bunch of dumb geeky details about currency in Italy in the 1500s that I never thought I needed to know. So that's one of the challenges of researching fiction books, I feel like, and it's one of the fun things about it too. It's fun to fall into those rabbit holes and keep looking up things that I didn't think were important until then. So.
Yeah, maybe that's why I've stuck with modern times so far, or with the future, because the future you can make up, and it's not.
Sure. It's a lot of work. That is undeniable. Yeah, there's a lot of work to researching, and that's one thing. I guess I'm definitely a bit of a nerd, so I've always loved spending hours in the library and looking up history and finding old firsthand accounts of things. It's just fascinating to see some of these things in person. So.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. It sounds like you're very well read. I mean, again, across many genres and fields. What are you reading right now? Anything interesting?
Oh, good question. So I just finished a book called Ghost Soldiers about a raid in Cabanatuan POW camp in the Philippines during the World War II.
That was a nonfiction, or at least a
Oh yeah, it was a nonfiction by a guy named Hampton Sides, I think his name was. It reads a lot like a fiction book, though. It's really well written. One of the more fascinating history
Great.
book I read just because he wrote it so well. So yeah, I just finished that one, and I'm reading Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett. I'd actually never read that book, so I figured what the heck. So
I think I read the Wishbone version when I was little, but
yeah,
I have not read the original.
yeah, yeah. I hadn't read it till now. It's pretty good. I'm enjoying it. I'm gearing up. So Tangled Eons, my characters are going to Pacific Theater in World War II. So I'm kind of reading
Okay.
some World War II books right now. So getting ready to dig into that more. I just almost done in honor of Batman Day. I've been reading through all of Peter Tomasi and Gleason's Batman and Robin. Almost finished with the whole thing in a big omnibus. So
I read that one, or at least read ones around that. Yeah.
I hadn't read them. They're pretty good.
Okay,
So,
okay. So you read comics and stuff as well. I mean, I'm a big comic book fan. So
yeah. So yeah, this guy got me reading more and more comics. I was reading. I really
that's
like.
cool. I mean, I know we live in an age where you can be a superhero fan without ever opening a comic book, which is cool because there's the movies and stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad you're going to the source material and all that stuff. So.
Yeah, I started reading a lot of Batman, especially when I read Supinator. I wrote Supinator, and now I can't stop.
That is one of the favorites. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, one question I have, and I mean, I'm sure others have wanted this too, but kind of is, basically every writer I've talked to, when I've asked them what's one of the hardest, one of the biggest challenges for you, they always say finding the time. And so, I mean, you're finding the time not just for writing, although that's important, but you're reading a lot, which I guess, I mean, obviously you love reading anyway, but
Sure.
I know you also have a day job as a veterinarian, which is, not just an easy like 9 to 5 job necessarily.
Yeah.
And you have a family too, right? You have kids, right?
Yep. I've got 6 kids, so it keeps us
Wow.
busy. Yeah.
So my question is kind of how do you manage your time and find the time to work on research and writing and everything else you're doing in the midst of having a job and a family and all that. So
yeah,
speak to that.
That's an excellent question. And it's a tough thing to do, undoubtedly. As I've gotten older and busier, it's gotten harder and harder. So I mean, I used to stay up till 2 a.m. some nights, doing a lot of writing late at night. I'm doing that less and less. More exhausted I get at night. Things that life is catching up to me.
I try to do my reading at nighttime and I fall asleep and then in the morning. So I'm going to help you.
So most of the time these days, I'll do it little at a time on my cell phone. So I've got Microsoft Word on my cell phone. I carry around a little tiny Wi-Fi keyboard in my backpack. And when I have, half an hour of nobody coming into the clinic, I'll sit there and do some writing and reading and researching. I work at an emergency clinic, so it's very like hit or miss. There's, 3 hours of nothing and then all kinds of craziness. So I do a lot of my research and writing there. And then the same with home. So I'm shuffling my kids around all the time to ballet classes and things. So I'll have an hour here and an hour there that I have nothing to do but sit there and wait for them to be done. So I usually take my books I'm reading and my books I'm writing and work on those there too. So
you find a time where you can.
Yep, that's exactly right. So that's really how I write most of the time these days. I seldom schedule a time and sit down and do it. It's more just I write whenever I can do it. So,
yeah, some people have to have that structured time, like in the morning, kids wake up and all that stuff. And I mean, my kid wakes up like 5:30, so I can't do that. Yeah. So it's not good for me, but yeah. But
yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
Do it when you can, and I mean, that's good that you're being proactive and you're not just like taking, I mean, during those times, you're not just like checking your phone or whatever. You're actually doing something productive and pursuing your dream, I guess, or
that's right.
Your fun hobbies at the very least. So
that's right. Yeah, no, it's and it's something I definitely have to be proactive about and conscious of, because other words it'll not happen. So I've certainly tried over the years to schedule specific times to write. It just hasn't really worked out well for me. Inevitably, 3 of the kids will come in and jump on my head and stuff whenever I sit down to do it. So it just depends on your lifestyle, I think, as to how you write best.
What's the age range of your kids?
My oldest is 11 and the youngest is 2.
Wow, congrats. Yeah, that's a big range. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a 3-year-old, I know the youngest. I know the stage that the youngest is in. That's a fun age, but I mean, even one, I felt like my hands are full. So
It's true. Yeah, they keep you busy. They're wonderful, wonderful kiddos. I love them all, but they definitely make writing tricky sometimes.
awesome. Okay, yeah. I meant to ask you this earlier, and I was on my list and I forgot. If you could time travel anywhere or any when, as the case may be,
Oh yeah.
when would you go and why?
Ah, that's a good question. There's so many different times I would love to see for sure.
Top 2 or 3, maybe.
Okay, well, so yeah, one of my favorites. I would love to go see King David the Builder in the 1100s. David Agmashinabeli was made king in medieval Georgia when his dad threw up his hands after the Turks invaded and said, "I can't take this anymore." And he made the poor guy king at 16 years old when his country was taken over, and he was hiding in the forest and doing a guerrilla war against the Turks during the First Crusade. Very fascinating dude. So that would be fun. I would love to go hang out in the forest with this Robin Hood guy in medieval Georgia and see what he was all about. I would miss the comforts of home though, so I just want to be a tourist and not like live there.
That's my own too.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the very answer shows me how well learned and knowledgeable you are. I mean, because I have no idea who that person is, and I was medieval Georgia. I didn't. I had no idea what Georgia was like in that time period.
It was amazing.
Yeah, when you say King David, I was thinking like the biblical King David, and then I was like, well, this is different.
This
So,
is his namesake there. Yeah. So that's one thing I love about reading history is all those little rabbit trails. That I learned about medieval Georgia reading about the First Crusade. It's one of my favorite things to study now. It's a fascinating country.
cool.
Had cave cities in medieval Georgia. There was a place called Vardzia, and it was like a whole city built in a cave that they lived in for a while. So
Nice.
all kinds of crazy things there that you can only imagine in fantasy books, but it was real life. So
Yeah, that's
pretty
awesome.
cool.
You make me want to read and do more research. I mean, I think this stuff is interesting. I haven't dedicated as much time to it as you have. But it's a fascinating topic, so that's awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm glad you're getting to dig into it and explore your passion in these ways. That's great. Okay. Yeah, great talk so far. Thanks for everyone who's watching. Yeah, we have had some people watching along and good questions in the comments. Keep posting your questions in the comments for Aaron. I mean, we're not finished. I'm just giving a segue. So like I said, when I've asked people before what the hardest part for them is, usually the number one answer I get is time management and such. But what about the actual craft of writing / editing? When you're actually like, well, I mean, I guess research is part of that too. But when you're actually sitting down to either do research or do what you do. Let's say time isn't an issue, and you happen to have a magical day of like 12 hours to yourself or something. Then what's the hardest part? The biggest challenge for your stories?
Yeah, like getting the words down on paper. You mean? Yeah. So I mean, it's part of it is just getting in the right mindset. But then I find for me, sometimes what I have to do is just jump in there and get started. So I'll just start writing things. I've learned over the years, I can always go back and edit it 3,000 times later if I just finally get the words down. Perseverance has always been a tricky thing with writing, where you just have to be disciplined and make yourself sit down and write, even if you don't quite know the right words. I found one of the most useful exercises in writing for me was writing humor. Yeah, I hadn't written a whole lot of humor things, but when I wrote like those silly fantasy books I was talking about, that was one of the best ways for me to practice the craft of writing. Before that, I hadn't cared too much about like, the sentence structure and the words I use, so much as the plot and the characters.
I'm learning to focus on both. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's something about writing humor where you know have to structure things to be funny and make puns and metaphors and make it funny with every sentence. So it really forces you to sit there and think exactly about the words and where you put them in a sentence and how you're crafting your paragraphs. And so that's been a really good exercise for me. So I've been trying to incorporate more and more funny things in my writing just as a good exercise. So.
Yeah, I like that. What was I gonna say? Are you one of those people who you said when you sit down, you gotta think about it, and you're not always in the right mood at first.
Yeah,
You go in kind of knowing where you want your story to go, like knowing broadly what you want to write, or
I
are you one
oh,
of the people who says like the characters surprised me too, and I had no idea what they were gonna do that, like,
yeah.
or somewhere in between. Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere in between. That's probably the best answer. So it kind of depends on the project for me. So like in Crescent Tides, I felt very much like the latter thing you said, where the characters, I created the characters, I put them in this world, and then they just sort of did what I expected them to do, and some things I didn't expect them to do, because I knew if I put this guy in this setting, then these are the things that have to happen. So it was a strange feeling to kind of be watching the story shape itself in some ways. But that's been more the exception for me. I guess a lot of times I start with like a picture in my head of a scene, and then have to structure things to get to that point. Usually, I have a pretty clear beginning story and an ending of the story, and then muddle my way to the ending. I often use some outlines to help along the way, and I always find out that those are not very rigid. Writing makes you pretty flexible because half the
Yeah.
time I change my outline by the end of the story about 6 or 7 times because I have to change the plot as things go along to make it make sense. So
Yeah, that's kind of what I do. I have a high level outline. I mean, not every detail, but some of the major points.
mhm.
I generally know where I want it to end up, and I mean, sometimes I have different scenes in my head, and I'm like, I have to. I'm not sure what order they take place in, so I have to kind of write them out on paper to figure that out. But yeah,
Yeah.
I
No,
mean,
you're right.
yeah. Sorry,
I
go ahead.
found sometimes I'll get I found one thing that's useful more and more for me is uh, especially since I'm writing in little pieces here and there, in between all the activities I'm doing, I will take a minute after I finish writing to like write 3 or 4 sentences of the next things, kind of like an outline of the next 6 pages I want to write. Say this is the next 5 things that need to happen in the story next time I sit down, and that's been helpful sometimes too.
Yeah, it gives you structure and it helps you to know where you're going, and in theory, curbs some of that with sitting and figuring it out time for next time.
Exactly right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I usually get a lot of ideas like walking and doing physical activity too. So sometimes that's when I do a lot of
And all your
plot.
free time. Yeah. Mm. And all the free time you have to take long walks and stuff.
I
Yeah.
know exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like if you've got next, I think you said 3 books planned out, or at least broad ideas. I mean, it sounds like you're someone who at least has some idea of where you want it to go.
Yeah.
So
At least a vague idea. The hard part is getting there.
yeah, it's a journey.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing. I mean, that's, I mean, I've heard every writer has different philosophies on that. I've heard, you might have heard the terms plotters and pantsers versus whether you plot it out or fly by the seat of your pants. But that's
Yeah.
helpful. Then conversely, what's one of the biggest strengths in your writing, or what's one thing that your books do really well, you think?
So I mean, I think I do. We talked about research. I feel like that's one of my strengths. Just because I've always been kind of
Sounds like it from talking to you for this little time period.
yeah, that's something I enjoy doing. So I love reading all the little details of the things I'm researching. So that's been a strength of my writing, I think, as opposed to sometimes it's hard for me to craft the plot just the way I want it. So that's a challenging. I've been pleased with the plots that came in my books by the time they were finished, but it sure was a struggle for a lot of them to get it where I want it to be, because I can do the research, but making the story arc happen exactly like I want, and come back along to the beginning of the story and matching the characters up, and so it can be tricky for me to plot a story sometimes. but yeah, I feel like the research is easier for me for sure. I'm good at coming up with ideas. I have files and files of story ideas on my computer. So that's one thing that I've found have as a strength.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, again, it sounds like you've got quite a few ideas for. I feel like time travel opens up all the possibilities.
Yeah, it does.
For example, I don't know if you're a Doctor Who fan, but
Mhm.
they go to, they can go to any time period, any place in the galaxy. It's like you never run out of stories. So
It's right. It's never ending possibilities, right? Yeah, that's
yeah.
true.
Okay. I realized I was in the chat. I clicked something to make it so I was only focused on one comment. I didn't see all the other comments, but Ted also asked a question that we now have answered about when you do your writing with everything else you've got going on. So I'm
Yeah.
glad I covered that one. But yeah, anyone has more questions, post them in the chat. I can see the questions now, and we want to hear from you in the next little while too. Okay. Similar question, Aaron, to what we were just talking about, the craft of writing. From your experience so far, can you offer any writing tips that maybe other people overlook or don't know, especially for other up and coming writers?
Yeah, good question. I think that the main thing I would tell up and coming writers is to keep writing. So that sometimes in the past, and now I've found that it's easy to start a book and it's hard to finish. So, a lot of times writing is just a discipline, and I just have to sit there and make myself write even when I don't feel like it necessarily, even though I love to do it. There are certainly days I need to do it and don't love to. So that's something important to realize is making writing a bit of a job is sometimes good. We talked a little bit about writing humor. I think that's definitely a tip I would tell people. Is make yourself write some humorous things just as a good exercise for word craft. In fact, that's probably a good idea about a lot of different genres. I've found writing different types of genres helps sharpen my writing skills in general. So
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I like the humor idea. I hadn't heard it before. I've dabbled a little bit in that too. I have a side project with a friend. We're running like a satire blog about superheroes and pop culture.
nice.
But yeah, I'll share it with you later. You might get a
I'd love to see it. Yeah.
I'll go ahead and say it's Marvelous Movies. It's marvelous-movies.com. But yeah,
I'll check it out.
I've kind of realized. Writing humor is like, well, for one thing, it has to be short and punchy these days because we're also like news articles, and it's it's much different from other kinds of writing I do. But it's been a good exercise.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. But yeah, I hadn't thought about how that can benefit your fiction writing too in that direct way. So
you can communicate a lot of different truths through humor too. I found one of my favorite writers is Terry Pratchett. He writes really funny books about fantasy worlds. And it's amazing the the lessons he can communicate just through humor too. Just kind of make when you laugh at yourself just the right way, you start realizing some of the things you hadn't realized about yourself.
I know the writing world is a big fan of him. I'm a little more familiar with Douglas Adams, who I've been told is very much for sci-fi. So
yeah, that's true.
True of both. Yeah. Good tip. Yeah, we all love to laugh, and it depends on what your story is, but a lot of our story, most stories have some place for laughter, even if they're not primarily humor. There should be moments of comic relief and moments of characters enjoying themselves and having fun and telling jokes. So yeah, I think that's good.
Kind of on the flip side, I was just thinking that so most of my books, I've always had kind of a moral of the story in mind. And that's something I would certainly recommend writing books too. Usually it's helpful to be writing for a reason. For pretty much everything I've written, I've had some kind of point of the story I wanted people to know by the end or feel by the end, even if they don't realize that they're hearing it. So that's an important part of writing too on a more serious side.
Definitely, yeah, I agree with you. And we don't have time to get into a deep discussion. Some people today question whether writing should have, a predetermined moral or purpose. But I think even if it's not, even if it's not a moral, it has a theme. And
Yeah.
there is an impression you want to create on your readers, even if it's not a direct lesson. It's like you want them to come away feeling this or thinking this, and yeah, I get it, and I think we should know what it is.
Yeah, it helps to know kind of what your point is to start with. Yeah, whether you do it really, you present it real subtly or super preachy. It just kind of depends on your audience. So
yeah. Don in the comments pointed out Shakespeare used humor. So
yeah, that's great.
I mean, some people don't realize that today. But I'm thinking like kids in high school who don't understand Shakespeare.
Yeah.
They don't realize how funny he was.
No, yeah, he was pretty hilarious a lot of times. In fact, his comedies are some of my favorites for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're in good company there.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. This has been a good conversation so far. I want to move a little bit into the publishing world, and I wanted to ask you, tell us about your publishing process. So did you do self-publishing or traditional? And then kind of how did you know which path was best for you?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so we've essentially done self-publishing. It's been a kind of a unique journey for me. I started submitting some books to publishers, and it was not something that I really enjoyed doing, and it seemed strange to me. So I like the idea of self-publishing where I can control things more, basically.
I'm trying right now. I'm putting myself out there for publishers, but I talked to one person on here who said like she submitted queries for like a year and then got tired of it and decided to self-publish. So I might get there one day myself. We'll see. But yeah.
So yeah, there you go. Yeah. That's one thing I love about self-publishing is being able to control what we do in every little aspect of it. What's happened for me is, so I started writing many years ago, and then my sister Katie started writing. She writes lots of wonderful books too, and over the years we accumulated enough books. We decided through encouragement from my wife especially that we should make an LLC and start publishing our books under it. So that's kind of what we did, is we created our own little company and published it under our own print. So
what's your company called again?
It's called Post Tenebrous Looks, After Darkness Light. It's an old phrase from the Reformation. So
cool.
Yeah, so we that's how we went about things, and that's kind of what launched me into the idea of self-publishing, was realizing, well, we could do this together and make this kind of our own little small business. So that's been a whole interesting journey on its own, and over the years we've built up kind of a great cadre of wonderful people that help us with different things, not just writing, but like business running. I've now been working with some more of my fantastic relatives that draw pictures or do graphic design, and we're hiring some of them to do some of the stuff for us too. So it's becoming more involved to publish books, and I feel like we can accomplish a whole lot more now publishing them than we used to. So
really cool. Yeah, I know. I know self-publishing is easier and more popular than it ever has been. I've talked to a lot of people who've done that, but
yeah,
I've heard of. I mean, not as commonly, but I've heard of people like kind of like making their own company so they can do that more often.
Yeah.
Does that mean you do like all the printing, all the typesetting, like how does that work? But down to the details level.
Yeah, good question. So we do the writing and the editing and formatting all ourselves, and then we hire out the printing to somebody else. Usually it's Amazon. The KDP is usually the cheapest way to do it. So that's just what we found for most of our books. I've used Lulu for one book.
I've used
Yeah, and we used Ingram Sparks for one of our books, so we've been looking into some more like local printers too. But just the most cost-effective way to do it has been through KDP to actually do the printing, which actually happens right down the street from us. So I didn't realize it, but one town away from us is where most of my books are printed. It's a small world. So, but yeah, so the printing. Yeah, I
What?
looked at the back of one of my books the other day. It said printed in Corinth, Texas. There's an Amazon printer there. So
Cool, yeah. We talked about it before we went live at the beginning, and I realized we're kind of in the same area or close to it. I'd forgotten. I didn't realize.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been pretty amazing. So yeah, we it's a lot of work to do all the formatting and the editing, and Joy does most of the formatting for me, and she's become really good at that. And then generally we have a group of people, we pass the books around before we publish them, and they go through probably a good 10 edits or so at least before we're printing them. So that's one of the challenges self-publishing, is we don't want to throw out books too quickly that are poor quality, but try to make something something good. So,
I mean, there's different kinds of self-publishers. There's like, hey, I wrote something and I printed a few copies for friends and didn't look it
yeah,
over all. I mean, I know that happens, but I mean, people are doing it more seriously and more professionally than ever before. And it sounds like you're on that end of the spectrum.
we're certainly trying to get more and more that way for sure. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. I mean, if you have people who are like on hand editors and illustrators and stuff like that, that's a good, yeah, that's a big start. So there you go.
Yeah, it's good that we've gotten to a place where we can that's one thing I realized the other day. It's real exciting that I can take some of these ideas I've had for years and turn them into real books now. It got the machine to make it happen now. So
That's the dream, kind of. Yeah.
yeah.
How big is your reach? I mean, do you, I mean, like, is your book available like just on Amazon or like in bookstores, or like how far are you guys able to get it out as publishers?
Yeah, good question. I mean, so mostly like online sales right now. We sell it on Amazon, and we have our own internet store. So we have like a stock here that we ship out when people buy them at our website. And then we also go to conventions. We've mainly been going to homeschool conventions because a lot of my nonfiction books are like school classes basically. And then I take all my fiction ones too. So we usually do 5 or 6 conventions a year. Go there and see people and study. I mean, and sell books.
I mean, you're
That's
in
a
a big
lot.
area like DFW, so you have any kind of convention you want
Yeah,
nearby.
for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Once I publish, I'm like, I'm in because they always ask you like what's your marketing plan. I'm like, well, I could go to bookstores, I could go to Comic Cons.
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a big area. There's a lot of opportunities. So
No, that's very true. Yeah. I've been looking into some more of those local opportunities. The local libraries have spaces on the shelves for some of my books too. So, and then there was a store. We had our books on a brick and mortar store. They just closed down like last week, sadly, but they were there for a couple of years. But yeah, that's the only place I've had them like in a store. But
that's still that's a good accomplishment to have books in a store. I know for those of us who are kind of do it yourself up and comers, that's like the dream or part of it at least. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that just takes, so that was kind of one of those divine appointments at a little tiny convention. I met somebody that ran this place, and we started talking and ended up connecting, and so you make a lot of connections going to conventions and just getting your books out there, and they grow into other things.
Okay. Is it so the post Tenebras Lux, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Is it publishing primarily your books, or are there other authors with you?
Yeah, just me and Katie. So my wonderful sister Katie has written, man, she's written more books than I have. I think she got a good 20 books out or so. So yeah, she and I have published through that company. That's it so far. And my wife Joy did one now, so she's writing a little bit too. So
sounds like you're quite a prolific family.
We're having a lot of fun. I'm doing lots of writing.
Yeah, everyone I've talked to pretty much. I mean, I guess you could say on the journey, meaning we don't know, or none of us have arrived, if we even know what that means. I mean,
Sure.
if the dream is being a full-time published author, and financially as well as everything else, most of us aren't there yet, but
Sure.
sounds like you're having a lot of fun on the way. So that's and doing a lot of good stuff that some of us are just dreaming of. So
yeah,
that's really cool.
yeah.
Okay.
Somebody
Oh,
Oh,
go ahead.
I was saying somebody at one of those conferences I was talking to mentioned that very thing, that pretty much most writers all through history have always had a job that supported the family, and then they wrote for fun. So I said, yeah, that's pretty much been my experience too.
No, other than the 1%, like,
Sure.
Stephen King, Brandon Sanderson, J.K. Rowling, kind of people.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, most of us, that's where we are, or at least where we start out. I mean, even if, yeah, anyway, it's just, but no, there's a big, yeah.
We try to grow, but that's also an okay place to be. I've discovered about myself. It's not at all bad to be able to write for fun and do something else also.
It sounds like you're in a good place and enjoying the journey. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to ask. Well, we kind of covered this one already. I had on the list to ask about self-promotion or engaging the audience and things like that. So
Oh yeah.
yeah. Well, you talked about strategies you have for that, how you've gone to conventions and connected with people and such. Oh, Joy posted the link for post Tenebras Lux books in the
Oh,
comments.
good. Yeah.
When it's
Thanks,
interesting,
Mike.
yeah, look there in the comments for that link. Post tenebrasluxbooks.com. The books are available there. I guess they're also on Amazon and stuff. But
Mhm, mhm.
I wanted to ask, and I know you've touched on this already, but what do you have currently in the works, or either currently or for the future? You're writing a World War II book. Can you give us maybe, I mean, without spoiling too much, an overview of some of the things you have planned or hoped for coming up?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so I'm writing the next book in Tangled Eons. I have 6 total planned, so I'm halfway there. I've got three in the series, and there's 3 more to go. There's a lot happening in this next one, but the bulk of the story is going to be an adventure in World War II, spanning from the Pacific Theater back to like the home front and the Trinity test site, which is kind of my home territory. I grew up in New Mexico, so yeah, so that's going to be a fun story. There's also an aspect of it of like almost Red Dawn-ish, post-apocalyptic, the world's collapse kind of thing, because try not to give away too much story, but as more time travel happens, more chaos starts to happen too. So I'm starting to flush out some of those ideas in this book. Um, that's kind of one of my bigger projects I'm working on right now. I'm also
Target deadline for that one, or a target release date?
that's a good question. So I'm I'm probably about a third of the way through the first draft. So
So it's still a ways off.
yeah, still a ways off. It's probably going to be another year and a half before it's published.
Yeah.
What's closer is a history book I just finished. So I just finished writing a book about Vikings and their conversion to Christianity. Probably the first, like, I guess maybe the second. I did my one about chivalry, where it's just kind of a detailed study. This one's probably more just straight up a history book too. So I started asking myself, what happened to the Vikings? I know they converted from being heathens to being Christians, and so I wanted to know why that was and what did they do afterwards. So that's what this book is about.
All good questions. I don't know the answer, so
yeah, I didn't either. So, but I've had a wonderful time finding out. It's been fascinating. Some really incredible people in history that I never knew about.
when's that one coming out?
That one should be coming out in the next couple months. So we finished the first draft and the first edit, and now we're starting to edit hard and heavy, and getting some of the cover work done and stuff. So it's getting closer for sure.
Awesome. Okay. So and just reiterating for the audience. I mean,
yeah,
historical. You've got time travel. You've got adventure. And nonfiction. It sounds like it's something for everyone. So, and
yeah.
I'm interested to go check out. I mean, obviously, I think Supinator is the one that sounds like it's most up my alley, but there's a lot of good stuff in there probably. So I might have to look at that afterward too.
I'd love to have you read it. It was a fun one to write. That's been one of my favorites for sure.
No, good. When and if I do read it, I mean, I'm sure you know my to be read pile is huge, and
absolutely, yeah.
I've been trying to. I mean, I have lots of books from the mainstream I want to read, and then when I'm doing these talks with authors, I mean, I can't read every single book they have, but some of them it sounds like they're up my alley. I've tried to add them to my list, so
yeah.
I would try to add yours too.
Hey, good.
But
put me on the pile someday. That's all.
Yeah. As long as you're on the pile, I mean, I'll get to you. Might not be as soon as we'd like, but that's okay.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
But, where can people follow you and your work online? I mean, tell us your website, tell us what social media sites you're on, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so yeah, that one that you're talking about that Joy posted is our book website. So that's Post Tenebrous Looks. I think it's books, Post Tenebrous Looks books.com. Long name. And that's like our online store where you can buy our books. And then you can buy them on Amazon too. If you like reading books on Kindle, most of them are all digital as well.
You also have a website, don't you?
Yeah, so that's the other place is I have a website, NM, that's stands for New Mexico, nmgrubens.com. That's my personal author website, and I do a blog that I try to get out occasionally. I need to get better about doing that more regularly. But yeah, I have a lot of blog posts up there, and you can follow my works in my life a little bit there. We have an email list too, if you're interested in signing up. I think there's a link to sign up for on our author webpage, that nmgrubens.com. We'll send out emails periodically too, with just some more updates about things.
Okay. And you're on Facebook, Twitter.
Yep, Facebook and Twitter, and there's I think my wife has gotten me on a couple other ones that I never check, and so you'll probably find links to them on my website too.
Yeah. She posted the link to your main website too, NM Gruben. So for those who want, and I mean, even if they see this after we've ended in a few minutes, the links will be there, and I'll post them when I reshare this too. But very cool. So yeah, go support Aaron. Go support local author, or I mean up and coming authors. I mean wherever you are. I mean I know we're all on the journey. We're all trying to make it as authors, but I mean a little support from fans goes a long way, as you guys know. So
very true.
If anything you've heard today sounds like something you're interested in, go in there and check it out. So yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. Anything else you want to say? You want to say to the folks at home before we sign off?
Nothing I can think of except certainly for all the folks in my life that have supported me in my writing. I appreciate every one of you. So it's been great. So cool. And thank you, Sam, for having me. It's been fantastic. So.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you those in the chat for watching, listening, asking comments, asking questions, and just posting good comments. It's been a good discussion. You can always, those of you watching, you can like my page, Samuel and Harris, for future discussions and content for writers, or you can sign up for my mailing list at the Chipper Maker link there. When you sign up, you get a free sample of my story, Fractured Heroes, with a few favorite scenes that I think you'll enjoy. And again, go check out Aaron's work too at his website or his publishing store. They're both there in the link. Well, anyway, thank you everyone for watching today. Thank you, Aaron, for being here, and have a great weekend, you guys.
All right, thank you guys. Bye.